What's most important for institutions is to fully understand what they're putting their capital into.
Can we say that restaking is solving an issue in blockchain?
Byzantine doesn't take any kind of risk decision. We allow the access to everything in a very easy way. We're giving tools and clients make them what they want. Our mission is to bring more institutions and more capital from traditional finance into crypto and to make it compliant, to make it easy, and to make it very accessible.
Hello Gaia, it's a pleasure to have you with us today. The idea is with this format is to talk about restaking, what Byzantine can offer around restaking, especially for institutionals. Before going in details, please, could you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invite. Very happy to be here. It's a warm day here in Dubai. So, a little introduction about me. I'm originally Italian. I moved to France for my studies. Have a background in statistics, and this is actually how I got into crypto. Two of my flatmates back in 2017 were launching a protocol on Ethereum, and I was just like not knowledgeable about it at all. And I started looking into it just from the volatility perspective, because I found it extremely interesting how all of those assets were so volatile over time. Started doing a lot of research and eventually published my thesis trying to showcase that the volatility of crypto is eventually diminishing over time. I then spent quite some time in traditional finance. I studied it, I worked in it. I met my co-founder the first time in London School of Economics studying finance. It was back in 2020. We worked on a few projects together. We both launched a couple companies, but it was nothing big and mostly projects. One is a restaurant, still exists. The other one is a model UN platform that Jonas launched, and up until now it's still running. A good chunk of the universities are actually just still using it. But we wanted to do something bigger, and we wanted to do it together because we already knew that we were working together really well. We ended up moving back to Paris. We ended up doing the same master again together. And chances want that one of our classmates is one of the ex-co-founders of Morpho, the lending protocol on Ethereum. And we looked into what they did, and we learned a lot from their experience because they were really young and they were still in school when they launched it, and got the chance to exchange with one of the co-founders quite heavily. And two of the key things that we learned were do a lot of market research because it's an ecosystem that keeps evolving a lot. And the second one is make sure you're building something that people want. And with that, we started Byzantine.
Welcome to this new episode of Merian Chain on Air. I'm Louis, CPTO at Merian. This episode is recorded besides the Token 2049 happening in Dubai this week. And first, I would like to thank our partner Earth Mining Solution to host us today. In this episode, we will discover together a blockchain project. We will start with the genesis of the project, technical approach, value proposal, and on top of that, the ecosystem. Thanks to be with us during the next 30 minutes, and let's go. And how do you move on the restaking? Because restaking stuff, it's pretty new. Maybe before going on different questions around Byzantine and your value proposal, what is restaking? And I think it's not obvious for everyone. So what is restaking? We know staking, liquid staking, and all around. What is restaking?
Absolutely. So I first read the white paper of Eigen Layer quite some time ago while we were doing this market research. And the first time I opened it, I was like, so they have something, but this white paper could be very much eased out. We read it multiple times and we're like, okay, this seems to be a great idea. And we started discussing it a lot. But to make it really easy, I generally start from staking because I think that it's an easy way of explaining what that is. And it's gonna be completely untechnical, but essentially the way I explain it to traditional finance people is the following. Let's say that you have an asset, let's say a house, and I want to buy it. And what we would do normally is that we go through a bank or someone that certifies that you have the house and that I have the money, right? Now, let's say that we want to do it on the blockchain. We want to do it over a network where we don't have to trust a specific individual. What happens is that within the network of a blockchain, someone gets randomly elected to validate our transaction. And to validate our transaction, this validator need to put at stake a certain amount of capital. And this essentially allow the transaction to be validated in a truthful and secure way. Because if this person will validate the transaction wrong, then it's gonna get slashed and is gonna lose a part of this capital. But if he validates the transaction correctly and it brings security to the overall network, then the network itself is going to thank him for bringing the security and therefore issue an interest to him. This is staking. Now, restaking is a pretty new concept, and what that allows to do is that the validator that is checking the transaction between us, instead of just checking transaction between us, could potentially validate transactions or exchanges of data amongst different people on different, let's say, ecosystem, universes, blockchains, protocols, anything that requires someone to check whether the interaction and the exchange of data or capital between two or more people, it's secure and it's truthful. And what that means is that same amount of capital locked up, the validator can then bring security not just to or transactions on, let's say, Ethereum, but also on other protocols, other blockchains. What that means for him is that he's going to earn a certain interest from all of those multiple protocols that is bringing security to.
Can we say that restaking is solving an issue in blockchain? It's as an application, I need security, but I don't want to launch a new blockchain project, looking for validators, looking for liquidity coming to. So
correct.
Restaking is solving in a way an issue we have today in the crypto ecosystem, fragmentation of liquidity.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. The other side. So this is the investor side, right?
Yeah.
But what is the point of restaking itself is that it cuts down the cost of like just launching a new protocol or launching a new L1, because every time you have to validate and bring security onto this kind of networks, it is extremely expensive, and you need to the go-to-market is extremely complicated because you need like a lot of users, you need a validator, you need the liquidity. So this actually cuts down costs and make it extremely easy to launch a new protocol.
Yeah, and it helps builders to focus on their product.
Correct.
And value proposal instead of focusing on the tokenomics, economy, crypto ecosystem and so on.
Exactly. Yeah.
Very interesting. What Byzantine brings on top of that? I think you have a very distinct value proposal, because at the end of the day, the difficulty is to attract liquidity on the market and use that liquidity to, at the end of the day, secure application, create new usage. But all people bring liquidity are looking for yield in exchange. So how do you connect all the dots together?
Absolutely. So there are multiple things, but I think that the two key ones are that restaking is very fragmented. You can do it on multiple blockchains through multiple protocols, and we expect new orders to eventually come up. So there's a difficulty on accessing it. So on one hand, Byzantine solves the access. But the second and most important point is actually to who. We focus on institutions, and this focus comes from our market research that we run at the real beginning. And what we understood about restaking is that it will never pour out like a very high yield, which is what, for example, degens or like retail investors are looking for. But it's a risk structure and it's an investment structure that is very similar to staking. And who are the power users of staking? Institutions. And it's the way to not just target the institutions that are already staking right now, but also, and therefore like an upselling opportunity, but also to bring in traditional finance players, institutions, asset manager, family offices, and hedge funds that do own crypto or that are starting to own crypto, and that they want to do something with it, but they don't want to gain this massive risk that comes with a lot of other investment opportunities. They want something where the risk is transparent, they understand it, and restaking, if you look at it, is very similar to a bond. We like to call it an internet bond, actually, because it gives access to the underlying. So the underlying is like a different blockchain, a different protocol, but without having to invest directly into it. So it works in a very similar way. Just like an ABS has different risk profiles, a country has very different risk profiles. Of course, Argentina will have a higher risk, but also a higher reward compared to Germany, you know.
You touch upon risks. It's difficult to talk about risk-taking without having a discussion around risk. Staking could introduce a risk by default, native staking, because if a validator doesn't do the correct job, double signing, unavailability, and so on, there is a risk for the capital secured by this validator. Risk-taking adds a new layer of risk on top. What is the difficulty? What is all the pain points you have to solve, especially for institutionals not knowledgeable on crypto? I think it could be a showstopper for a lot of discussions.
That's an interesting question. What's most important for institutions is to fully understand what they're putting their capital into. And the only way and the best way to approach this is being extremely transparent about what are the risks. They will run a very extensive due diligence on all the AVSs they want to opt into anyway. So the way we approach it at Byzantine is that we allow them to do this massive due diligence. We allow them to have data on which they can run due diligence on, and we allow them to pick the AVSs they want to invest into. This is probably the big difference with like LRTs, right? LRTs are like hedge funds. They pick the AVSs they select, and then retail invest, and that is fine if you're investing like 10,000 euros, like a few hundred K. But if you're moving a few millions or even more into a financial product, then you want to know what's inside. You want to probably build your own ETF, your own structured product if you're in traditional finance. And it's the same in crypto, it's the same for restaking. You want to know which AVSs and which protocol you're opting into.
And is Byzantine a technical layer, or do you pre-select all the AVS, potentially eliminate shady players, or it's just a technical layer and you just connect technical layer blockchains with people having the liquidity?
We're the layer that connects everyone. So we never take any kind of decision on risk for our clients. Because different clients will have different appetites. We just allow them to move the needle where their like heel to risk appetite is best served. So this is what we do. We give access to everything, and it's up to them to put together the product that they want. We do also work with curators for the kind of clients that want to pass through someone else that is more knowledgeable than them.
Yeah, a risk manager, strategy manager, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Byzantine doesn't take any kind of risk decision. We allow the access to everything in a very easy way.
Today, risk-taking is mainly played on ETH. Outside of ETH, what is the risk-taking landscape looks like today?
Absolutely. Well, it's definitely a landscape that has been growing a lot. We're seeing a lot of risk-taking protocols on other blockchains coming up, like Layer on Solana. We're seeing the ecosystem on BNB developing, on Bitcoin as well, even though that's taken with Babylon and CoreDAO. So it's definitely an ecosystem that will continue growing. And our vision on it is that there will be more risk-taking protocols coming up, because there's not a winner-takes-it-all kind of space. Different risk-taking protocols can have very different approaches to risk-taking itself and how they want to shape it. Look, if we look at Symbiotic versus Eigen Layer, we can already see a massive difference.
Versus Bitcoin and Babylon, for example.
As well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, different risk-taking protocols, we expect more different approaches. And as the market evolves, also newcomers will approach the market in a very different way as well.
So we can say that Byzantine brings an abstraction layer to all that technical stuff, reducing the risk or a capability to identify risks.
Correct.
For them, and to create a layer of interoperability, reducing the fragmentation of the liquidity.
Correct.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
And in terms of ecosystem and governance, a lot of blockchain projects or blockchain associated projects have on-chain governance.
Yeah.
Or Do you consider yourself as a blockchain project with a volunteer to have an on-chain governance, or do you think you have to be a player with a centralized approach, or you are just an enabler for the blockchain ecosystem and a gateway, or do you think you are a blockchain project?
That's a great question. Definitely decentralization, non-custodiality, and being completely permissionless are key principles for Byzantine. And actually, just like a few days ago, I was discussing whether it's complicated or not to be decentralized and work with centralized institutions, because at the end it's traditional finance. And Byzantine will be decentralized, and Byzantine value this ethos of the crypto ecosystem that is this decentralization, and will bring it forward. And to those who then ask, how do you handle the relationship with centralized institutions? I believe that there are so many ways of interacting with them as a decentralized protocol. And I think that Morpho is doing an amazing job with that, for example. But as Morpho, Byzantine is very, it's just an infrastructure. We just give the Lego box, and then capital is accessible at any time. They have their risk decision-making processes. They can do their own due diligence. So we're giving tools, and clients make then what they want.
So can we say that you are the Morpho of Restaking?
We can say that.
Okay.
So we can use that.
In terms of product today, are you live? What is the roadmap with Byzantine? What are the next steps with the Byzantine product?
Absolutely. So the Byzantine product, we've been growing the team, and the product is essentially ready. We're launching on testnet, and shortly after we'll be live on mainnet. Key goals for us is to include more risk-taking protocols. We're also working on, when you restake, then you receive as rewards multiple different tokens, and this is a pain point for a lot of our clients. Also on the security side of things, but most importantly on regulations. So what we're working on is actually a way of you restake ETH and you receive ETH back, so that it's really easy. But of course, there's like a big compliance part that we're currently working on with the lawyers.
In terms of compliance, you raise the points. Bring you something for institutional. For example, I'm a US institutional finance, and I don't want to secure Chinese assets, for example, or the contrary, I'm a Chinese player and I don't want to secure US assets. At the end of the day, with blockchain, it's quite complex to manage your restriction.
Yeah.
How can you bring a certain level of accessibility to this kind of info, to have a clear due diligence on what I'm securing as an institution?
On one hand, of course, that is part of the job of the client to do an extensive due diligence. What we do on our end is to give access to all the data that are available about all of the different ABSs and all of the different risk-taking protocols. What I expect is that they're going to go for the most, known ABSs. Rather than the most shady or newer one. So essentially just giving access to everything and allowing them to pick the ones that they actually feel comfortable deploying capital into.
And in terms of ecosystem, so you say today you're compatible with Eigen Layer, Symbiotic, we say Babylon also.
Cordao, yeah.
What can we expect next?
An exposition on the Solana and BNB ecosystem. Yeah, because those are the two that we see growing. The parameter that we use is just how large are those risk-taking protocols are growing, because institutions are so much slower. So even if we integrate some protocols, institutions might not follow, and this is something that we don't want to do. We don't want to spend engineering power on integrating very complicated protocols if then there's no demand. So we're always looking at what our clients are looking for.
And in terms of enablement, today institutional players have their liquidity settled on sleeping on a custodian platform.
Correct.
And the step to go from custodian to on-chain protocol could be complex. How do we manage this layer of integration needed to go from the liquidity source to the on-chain protocol?
That is true. And what we do to make it extremely easy. So for example, for a lot of family offices and hedge funds, this is the case. We integrate directly with their custodian. And it's very easy, and it's a kind of a three-party deal once you have the client that want to deploy the liquidity, but they don't want to move it from their custodial, you have multiple options. I can move that liquidity to another custodian that want to do it, or we can just integrate with the custodian itself and just deploy the liquidity of their clients through their platform. Byzantine is completely white label, and what that means is that the custodian can keep their interface as it is and essentially offer restaking as if it was developed by them.
Okay, that's interesting. And in terms of interoperability, finance strategy, and so on, how do you see the synergy possible between restaking, yield, and DeFi, or potentially the capability to mix as a strategy manager, to mix staking, restaking, DeFi in the same strategy vault, or I don't know, I don't think something exists like that today. But how do you see that? I think in the coming future, it will be a challenge for someone to solve that point. What is your point of view on that?
That's a great question. I was actually discussing that a couple of days ago. And the way we're seeing moving forward is that we'd like to mix some kind of products. But actually the kind of products that we're looking into are rather like T-bills, and it's kind of tokenized versions of them. Because a lot of our clients are actually very risk averse. They don't really want to leverage loop in DeFi. They want to rather, take away some risk from restaking. So what we're looking into offering is like, on Ethereum, the basic like 3 to 5% of staking plus restaking based on the ABSs they want to validate, plus merging the product with maybe a T-bill that issue like 3-4% and with a much lower risk. Unless, well, we'll see about that. But technically, at least over the past few years, it's been the case. So yeah, we're looking into evolving in that direction as well.
Very interesting. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
Have you a final word, something to add to complete something we haven't covered today, or maybe a final word on Byzantine and what we can expect?
My final words on Byzantine and what we can expect. I'd say that our mission is to bring more institutions and more capital from traditional finance into crypto, and to make it compliant, to make it easy, and to make it very accessible. I think that this is the future of this industry. This is where we should all head towards. And I think that restaking is the product that will allow this to happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.